Hello everyone, today we are taking a look at the latest and greatest, hottest product on the market. Yes, the HDZero goggles. These goggles do analog, they do HDZero, they've got all sorts of features. It's basically a high-grade optical experience with a computer inside. And there's actually going to be things that aren't in this video that are going to come later because it's got a computer inside. It runs Linux. If you have the skill set, you could make changes to it. And they're going to be implementing features. In the beta testing period that we've been going through, there have been so many changes and little things added here and there, just little tweaks to make things work a little bit better or bring a feature that somebody in the beta test group has asked for. So that should bring me to the fact that, yes, I was part of the beta tester group. I did have to pay for the goggles, but I did receive a discount. And speaking of price, Divvy Math, HDZero, they're lowering the price of these goggles. $4.95. So that's not much more than what I paid for it with that discount. So if you're Orca and you're making analog goggles, or if you're SkyZone or you're eSheen, if you're any of those companies making analog goggles, good luck. Stick to the budget goggles because I don't see any reason that if you're flying analog, you would buy anything other than the HDZero goggles. Now, if you're flying HDZero, this also gives you the best possible experience. The optics are so good. I compared them to my SkyZones, the 04Xs. These are better. I mean, it's pretty simple. My Orca goggles, both sets, the originals as well as the V2s, the pilot goggles, I think they're called. These are better. I did compare them to the Walksnail goggles as well, which is a little tough because you have to set up two quads. You got to keep them apart so the image wasn't exactly the same that I was looking at when I was trying to compare the goggles. These are at the very least on par, and that's kind of conservative. I'm leaning towards better. And how you run Walksnail? HDMI in. It's got HDMI out. It's got an internal microphone. It's got a AV jack so you can plug in other things. It's got a earpiece or microphone that you can plug in. Matter of fact, I have two microphones here. This is the Boya. I've got the wire for the other one. The Boya. With this one, I think this is probably a more sensitive microphone, but it's so close that I sound older than I am with my huffing and puffing. We'll take a sample of that. So I switched over to this Purple Panda, and I just hang it down lower on my chest, and that gives me a good audio. That's going to make my workflow a little bit simple, I think. What's important about this, let me cover up this so you can see it, is that it needs to have those three rings. I think it's called TRSS or TTRS, one of those two. Basically, that has a name, but you need to make sure it has three, and then you should be able to plug it into the jack right down here. Set your line in on the mic within the interface, which is top notch, and you're good to go. So if you're buying goggles, and you're buying goggles for the purposes of analog or HDZero or Walksnail, and you have the funds, because of course budget does matter, these are the goggles to have at $4.95. They have set up service centers in Germany, China, and the US. So if you do have a warranty issue, or if you have, maybe you dropped them, you need them broken, you broke them, and you need them repaired, you shouldn't have terrible far. Our friends in Australia and some of those other locations, you may have to still send yours, but you never know. HDZero might be able to set up a service center near you one day soon, because it's pretty early yet for the goggles. The DVR in this, H.265, H.264 recording, and it is de-interlaced, and so it is so smooth. It makes analog look better. Not just the screens, but even in the DVR when you're playing it back on your computer. So if you share analog, I bought the Orca goggles originally because of the DVR. The Fat Shark DVR has been terrible for so many years. Only recently the SkyZone DVR got a little bit better. This blows them all out of the water. It just, everything looks better when you play it back. Of course, it looks great when you're looking in the screen. For latency purposes, this HDZero and the glass-to-glass, I don't have a way of measuring it, but I've seen some tests that have been done, and if those tests are legit, real impressive. I've flown it with the HDMI in and the Walksnail VRX, which I have on a tripod, and that seemed to work just like I would have expected to with the Fat Shark Dominator HD goggles. So I don't have any concerns with suggesting that if you have the VRX and you want a top-notch goggle at $4.95, that this is the one I would go to. So this is going to be my new goggle. Oh, and it's open source. So somebody could come along, say you don't like the design, and somebody could come along and make a new looking plastics to put this in, or maybe even resin print them. I don't know. But because they've got the CAD available, you can download it, tinker with it, make it your own. I suspect getting a plastic injected mold of it is fairly expensive, but you never know. People start businesses, other businesses adapt to the market. We could see this looking in a bunch of different ways. And to some people, that's going to be super cool. You also notice I've got these patches on the front. We have these rails that allow us to attach patch antennas like this, or you could do other things. It's quite simply just a 3D print, which I did not print these. I'm not good at setting up my printer. Matter of fact, I don't rely on it. So when I'm showing a product like this, I try to get a professional print done. So really, when it comes to these rails, you can do it with whatever imagination you might have. There's a few people, I think, that are working on a mount for the walk snail that will allow you to have it over the top of, say, 2 patch antennas like this, and then you just flip it up kind of horizontal. So when you want to use walk snail, you fold it down, and when you don't, you fold it back up. But we'll see how that develops. The jog wheel on here is really nice and easy to use. It's got a center button that you press. This over here is the record button. It's got 3 fans, 1 on each side, and then we've got the big one in the center. Unfortunately, the internal mic kind of gets dominated by that fan, and we'll play some samples here in a little bit. I want to cover kind of my experience and the main things that I was using and looking at for, because I know most people don't watch YouTube videos more than 5 or 6 minutes, so I'm trying to pack it all in there. The focus and IPD adjustments, they work great. They work really well. I think the one thing that I've heard about, I don't have the DJI goggles 2, but I think the DJI goggles 2 lock into place. Like after you turn them, you push them down and then they lock into place. These don't do that. So if you do bump them, or if they, when you put them in your bag, they may get out of focus. But I found it really, it only took me, 45 seconds in order to get them into focus as I've moved around and doing some of my testing. Sometimes I would pack things into a small cardboard box and then carry it out back and then put things back together and go fly and have some fun. I'm really impressed with this goggle experience. And I know that should be expected when a new product at this price point, even though it's a reduced price point, comes out. Our expectations should be high. But my expectations have been exceeded. Maybe that's the best way I can wrap up my use. And I don't think if you're buying analog goggles, unless you can't afford this line, of course, budget is always premium. You need to make sure you can pay your bills, feed your family, feed yourselves, take care of those that are around you. But if you're looking at a $500 goggle purchase and you don't fly DJI, I would get this. And if you fly a walk snail, I would get the VRX. That's what I would do. That's how I'm going to be running things. There'll be a link down in the video description if you want to take a look at these goggles. The module here on the side, I don't have it on. This does have a door on the side, but I fly a fair bit of analog, so I took that door off, and now I can't find it. It's around here somewhere. I know I put it in a special place, so I wouldn't lose it, but now it's escaping me. But this module, you get this little module, not with the rapid fire. We've got the rapid fire faceplate and the rapid fire inside of this. This just plugs in right over here on the side. Just kind of clicks into place, stays right there. It does have a screw hole in the back, so if you wanted to secure it down to your goggles, you just put a screw, right there, put a screw in there, and that lines up with the screw hole right there, so it really kind of double secures your module in there. And right now, mode 2 doesn't work great, but that's really a non-concern for me. I don't know why mode 2 working would be a priority, but I can't think of a use case, but you tell me why someone would want to run rapid fire 2 instead of rapid fire 1, because I thought rapid fire 1 was always the best mode. You can see I've got some antennas on here. The antennas do not come with the goggle, so that is an additional expense. Also, if you get the goggles, these prints don't come with the goggles either. So those are things you have to provide for yourself, including the SD card. And the SD card goes in the bottom. I think we need to get down to the desk. We can cover the hardware real quick. I do want to show you the interface because the interface is really easy to understand. Everything is very accessible, and because it's got HDMI out, I can plug it into my cam link, record it through OBS, and you'll see the same experience that I have in the goggles. Before we get into the hardware features and a look around the goggle, I do want to highlight this battery a little bit more. I charged this, and I've been running on this battery for probably the last 4 or 5 days. Now, I don't have really long sessions. You know, some of my sessions are tinkering. They're 30 minutes and I turn it back off and I do something else. And it's an hour and I turn it back off and I do something else. But this battery, it's new, so that probably helps. This battery is what I've been running, and it does fit neatly down in this little pocket over here. Fits in there just normal. Normally, I take the wires and I run them down through here, so it's a little bit cleaner. And, of course, this comes with a balance lead and an XT30. So I bought from Ready Made RC a package of 2 of these. It's a barrel connector. I will link it down in the video description. Ready Made RC really doesn't do much in the line of quad parts. There are more other RC products and maybe Nitro, I'm not certain, but every once in a while I found something on their site I wanted to buy, and this came from there. Although I will note, at the time I purchased, their stock was in red, and I think it showed 4 or 5 left. So, of course, you can make these yourself, too. You don't have to buy one. I went the buying route because I wanted to make sure I didn't hurt my precious goggles with a poor soldering job or something like that. So if you don't like running the long lead from the goggles down to a battery in your pocket, I suggest getting one of these. Of course, it does come with a prototypical lead so that you can run it into your pocket. It supports up to 6S, but be very careful. You've got to have this switch in the off position when you plug in a 6S battery. That initial voltage surge when it connects has the potential to hurt you. This is not me. This is Dibby Math. This is HDZero saying it does support 6S, but you've got to have this switch off when you plug that in. Now, invariably, someone is going to use 6S, and unfortunately, they're going to unplug their goggles because they're used to Fat Shark goggles that don't have power buttons, and then they're going to plug it back in and kill it. And I feel very, very bad for you, but maybe just run 5S or just run 2S on the goggles, maybe. Just be careful. As far as this cable goes, it's kind of what we expect. It's a real soft, sort of silicone-based wire. It is good and long. Would fit maybe everybody but Shaquille O'Neal from head down to their pocket. It does come with 2 faceplates. These faceplates look to be identical to the Sky Zone faceplates, so that means we could get aftermarket foam. Not that that's needed, but we have 2 different sizes for the curvature of our faces. Of course, we're all different, so this may work out great for you. It might not. If you have a chance to try on Sky Zone goggles, take a look at their faceplates. Speaking of the faceplate, this is some sort of neoprene padding. And oftentimes when I think of neoprene, because I've used it on radios to keep it in my hands, because I don't like to use a lanyard, I think of it as rubbery. This is not. This is very smooth. It feels nice on my skin. It feels as good, if not better, than some of the premium foam I've bought for other goggles. You know, we're always looking for that maximum comfort on our face. And when you put these up on your head, on your forehead, because that's where I rest my goggles a lot, they don't burn into your forehead. Your forehead doesn't come away with a line, or at least mine doesn't. The wax nail goggles, they dig into my head quite a bit. I'm noticing that here recently as I've been swapping back and forth. While we're looking here at the optics, I want to highlight one particular facet. Now, oftentimes when we're looking in goggles, it can feel like we're looking through a toilet roll tube, because we can see all the different parts internally, the part that's making up the screen, the part that's the housing, the part that's the optics, or the lenses, however you want to phrase it or think of it. This does not have that, and that again changes your experience. You don't look like, or you don't feel like you're looking at a distant screen. Speaking of looking at the screens, you can see all 4 corners, and you don't see much more than all 4 corners. So if you're used to running those wide view Orca goggles, which I did like up to getting these, the Orca goggles had a curvature and you couldn't see in the corners because the optics weren't right. So oftentimes I can't see my full flight time in my videos when I'm flying those goggles. That's a big deal when it comes to enjoying your experience. We've got a large strap that's actually pretty nice. It feels very premium. I think they went to a company and probably ran a few samples to get the kind they want. I appreciate this. Obviously, I have my buckle clear over here. It's because I got a ginormous head. Speaking of the buckle, right over here on each side, we have metal brackets that the strap attaches to, so that's nice. I think I mentioned it earlier, but if I did not, we've got 3 fans, one on each side, and this one in the middle. We've got some fan controls inside, so we can turn that up or turn that down. They are noisy or loud, but it's not a whining, it's not a shrilling sound. It sounds to me a lot like when you have a high quality fan that can move a lot of air. Of course, the sound changes as you change the numerical setting for each fan. So that can come and go. And we'll take a look at that as we look at the interface. The dial here on the side is really nice to use. I did see one person mention in the beta testers group that they thought it was a little bit too easy to move this. Obviously, that's not going to change. I like how this functions. I didn't have any troubles with bumping it and changing a setting inadvertently. When you are using the HDZero menu and you rotate this, you can change channels. But if you don't confirm with the center button, that just goes away. So no concerns about changing channels on you mid-flight. Somebody would have to grab a hold of your goggles while they're on your face, turn this dial a little bit, and punch the button. That would be bad and not a good friend. Also, let's take a quick peek. All these are my antennas as I move things around here. Let's take a look. If you're not familiar, this is kind of the HDZero aesthetic to kind of sink in the different antenna ports that we have on these things. So obviously it's not going to provide you any protection from shearing them off because they still stick up. So if you tend to throw your $500 goggles around, that's not going to be a durability feature for you. Let's look around here on the bottom. Head tracker, firmware port for updating our HDZero VTXs. We've got our headphone or mic input right over here. HDMI out, HDMI out. We've got our focal and IPD adjustments, and they're real smooth. They work like you expect. I think the slider in and out might be this. No, the slider feels a little bit more notchy. And this piece isn't really attached. This is just kind of an overlay piece. I actually saw somebody who took them apart and took a breakdown. Obviously, it goes from plus or minus 5. And this piece that's printed on is kind of a rubberized piece. It's not plastic, but the outside where we see all the little notches, that is the same sort of plastic we have in the goggle. Works real good. For the IPD measurements, you can see that stuff in all the specifications. I'm trying to avoid going through every little specification of the goggles. There is just so many. HDMI in, want to watch a movie, want to do some sim on your computer with the goggles on, get that real feel going on. HDMI in, obviously our SD card and our AV port right there. As far as light leak goes, the one place that I found light leak is not around the faceplate or the nose. And it's already been taken care of, so I'm kind of reporting a non-issue here, but maybe some of my fellow beta testers will confirm this. I think I may have even posted. But about right here, if you're in a brightly lit environment, like outside on a full sun day or inside, if you're in a brightly lit environment and you put your fingers right over here, there will be a kind of a dim, small amber light on each side of the panel that will go away. And HDZero, DiviMath, they have identified that, and it will be corrected. So kind of a non-issue for those of you that are going to be placing your orders yet. And it's not like a circle. It's not like a dot. It's like a light in the distance. It's not sharp. I actually had to do the typical reviewer look for light leak sort of thing in order to be able to even see that. And then as I moved my fingers around, I found that it's about in these spots on both sides, that really dimly lit amber light. It might have been amber because of the light I was working with at the time, but I'm repeating what I experienced. For those that aren't familiar, the rails are on the top and the bottom. Of course, they do that so that your pieces can grab onto. I should have had these printed in a more firm sort of material. I think they'll be fine. These cords are a little bit long. You know, I had to kind of curve them there a bit, and you can move them around still. I like that look, that pod racer sort of look. I don't know. They're attractive goggles to me, but design is very much in the eye of the beholder. Not everybody approves of everyone's partner in life as far as their looks go, so we're all a little bit different in that regard as well. One more thing it comes with is this bag. Of course, it's got HDZero on it, and this bag reminds me a lot of, if you go snow skiing, this bag reminds me a lot of kind of a nice glove, but not a real bulky glove. It is padded, and it does have this kind of I think it might even be velour material inside. It's real nice and soft. So of course this isn't going to provide you any protection from, other things. If you pack to fly and you throw this bag in and you put stuff on top, it's not going to provide any protection, but it certainly is a nice little bag. I would not be surprised to see a case come out at some point in time in order to fit the goggles just precisely. And if somebody else besides HDZero doesn't do it, I would not be surprised if HDZero themselves does it. They've been focused on the goggles, though. But we do get that, and it does pull closed, as you see there. Okay, it's time. I'm going to show you the interface. I'm going to plug in the HDMI out, which no other goggles have. and hook it up to my cam link and use OBS to record it. When it switched to that screen, that will be me trying to show you the boot time, because the boot time is something else. They've been working on decreasing the boot time for the goggles. Not that it was ever bad, but it's just one of those things where they're trying to make some headway on it. And of course, it'll change because they are working on it. It is one of those things they're trying to make it as short as possible. So whatever I show you is going to be probably less than what you have on your goggles, or an update that you apply to your goggles. So let's do that, and then we'll take a look at the interface, which is really cool. Okay, you got black screen, but I'm turning on the goggles now. Got my rapid fire beeping there to let us know we should start to see something on the screen relatively shortly. I'm looking in the goggles here, and I see the HDZero menu and the little dots running across the bottom. Boom. So yeah, goggles are already up. Let's go through the menu here. I'm going to drive with my little dial. You may hear it ticking. So obviously this is the default where it stops at the top menu on the left. Scan now for HDZero. You press the center button and it starts the scan, or you can just go through and change the channel using the dial as well. So let's go down to source. Obviously we've got HDZero. HDMI in is currently disconnected. AVN is disconnected as well. And I've got my rapid fire in the analog module adapter, and it shows detected. So when you have something plugged into HDMI up here, it turns green and it says detected, just like it does on the expansion module. Here are image settings. Note the little smaller print down there when making changes, that when you press this and you have an image, it will switch over to the image so that you can make the different changes that you see on screen, as well as looking at your FPV view. So you can match it up. Power, it shows us that I've got a 2S battery. You can see where I've adjusted the voltage down to 3.3. I'm not looking for top performance from this battery. I'm just looking to make sure it lets me run. The warning type there, oops, let me go back. The warning type, we've got beep, visual, and both. I've got it set to visual. I found the beep to be more of a chirp, and we'll cover that in the final segments. And it kind of chip, 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 almost like a bird, a real small bird. It was kind of harsh on the ears, so I turned that off. I go with visual, which is the icon on screen. Here's where our fans have changed. So we used to only just have, I think there was just one in here, and now we've got top fan and side fans, and you can change these in value up to 5. They've got a newer update that I don't have on these goggles right now that goes from 1 to 9, I think. It might even be 1 to 10. So you get a lot of fine grain control. Of course, I've got mine set to auto, so you may hear it rev up as we sit here at the desk with, not much airflow going on, so it may warm up a touch and spin up the fans. Be careful with that, by the way. You don't want to burn out your precious goggles. I keep calling them precious, don't I? Maybe I need to put that in the thumbnail. Okay, recording options. So record mode, we've got auto and manual. Manual is where you need to press the button on the right, just like you would with any other goggle, and then it starts the recording. I set it to auto because if it detects a signal and you've selected that source, it starts automatically. And then when you unplug the quad, it stops automatically. The recording format, MP4 and TS, I've left it on TS. Adobe Premiere works just fine with TS. TS is a higher, well, I shouldn't say higher quality. It's more reliable in that it's continual recording, so if you were to lose power on your goggles, you still have your DVR file. MP4, not so much. You turn off your goggles, you lose the whole file. You can record the OSD, which we'll take a look at in some of my DVR footage. You can turn that on or off. You can record the audio, which of course I've got mine set to yes, and then my audio sources down there. Oh, I keep hitting the buttons. My audio source down here, I've got set to line in. I tried the internal microphone, and we'll listen to that in our final segment as well. Of course, we can format the SD card. So we've got auto scan, which this was a nice improvement because it used to switch back to HDZero every time you power cycle the goggles. But now you can just have it selected to last, or you can choose what it goes to by default, which is kind of a nice feature. We've got connections. Some of this stuff isn't implemented all the way yet. We've got the ESP firmware, which I do think P. Kendall has got set up. The Wi-Fi requires an additional board, I believe, or some firmware. I'm forgetting now in the moment. I'll put something on screen or down in the video description about the Wi-Fi stuff. It doesn't currently work. You can see up at the top where it says Wi-Fi is off. Head tracker, pretty typical things, I think. I don't use head tracker. Playback. Let's go in here. Let me pick a file. We've got a lot of desk files on there because, of course, every time I turn them on, they're recording. Let's go into this file here.
So if we want to fast forward, we can just turn the dial, and you can see that the playback's a little bit choppy. Actually, it's kind of smoothing out a little bit from time to time. That is another thing they've noted that they're going to work on the firmware and making it smooth. Although we'll say it's a far bit better than it was with Emax's goggles for HDZero. Emax's was a little bit challenging. Of course, let's identify the OSD items that come with the HDZero goggles. Hopefully you can identify those yourself, but if not, the little fan icon on the top left with the 2 on it, that is from HDZero. The record is also from HDZero, and you're going to see others. Because this is all customizable. This is just a computer, and these have actually changed during the time I have. There are other ones that are available depending upon the features that you're using within the quad, but that's how you can kind of differentiate the use of the icons. Of course, it does not force you to push your Betaflight OSD or any other OSD out of that area. It doesn't reserve that area, which is actually kind of nice. So this is, of course, analog. I will play the analog file so you can see it in full, all of its glory. I'm also going to put some samples just for you to download if you want to look at, because with YouTube's compression, you might not get a real feel for the actual quality of the DVR footage. So one other feature, you press the button, pause, and then we can go back a little bit, or we can go forward a little bit and continue to play. So reviewing, I think, is, as far as I'm concerned, playing from the goggles, this is the most intuitive DVR I've used since 2015. Let's go back. We'll long press in the center button on the dial side. We'll long press to go back to our menu, long press to get out of the playback menu, and we go down to this last one, firmware. Now this is a little bit different. You can see the version that I'm running there. So you can see here we've got update VTX and update goggles. So you can keep your firmware on here and then just tell it which to update. But if you've got more than one VTX firmware on there, I don't suggest it. I don't know what would actually happen, but because I use or have been using a lot of the 1S HDZero VTXs, I've left the file on my SD card. So if I find one that I haven't updated yet, I can go right in here and update it. Of course, the goggle battery. And it does give you like a bar, and it gives you confirmation of success or failure. And that's the goggles. At least at this point in time of me recording, very early January. I think I should have this video out in the next couple of days. But I thought this menu was very clean, very easy to look at, very easy to navigate, nothing hard to figure out. You didn't have different buttons you had to go to for different functions like you do with the Sky Zones. I thought it was very well implemented, and that's part of the experience of just having an easy experience, because easy is good, right?
Okay, this is going to be our internal mic test, and you can hear the fan kind of wind up and wind down, so that'll give you some idea of the noise. The quad I'm flying is really quiet. It's the Star-Lord from Jack's 3D Printing, and it is with an HDZero 1S VTX on it and the Nano camera. I think this displays a couple things. One, we have the OSD from the HDZero goggles. If you look in the near the top left, we have the fan, and it shows us our fan speed. In the top right, we have our antenna signal strength, and also in the top right, we have our record. These things have since changed. Since the icon looks have since changed. Then you have the Betaflight customization that the HDZero goggles give you when you're flying HDZero, in the icons by the battery, as well as the run clock and the LQ, and the chirping also that will start up here shortly. It's not a sound that I liked on my ears, so I turn the chirp off and just go with the visual goggle battery warning.
Oh, that chirping is kind of annoying, or scary, because I've never heard it before. Oh, it's the goggle battery that's chirping at me, not the quad battery. It's got a little alarm up there. Oh, well, I gotta go back inside. Shocker. It won't be too bad. I can warm my fingers back up. I wonder how long that will chirp before it goes out.
So this does give you a sample of what the internal mic sounds like, as well as the pilot speaking and how useful that might be for you. Let's move on to our next segment. Okay, in this segment, we are going to have me talking. I'm using a different microphone. I'm using the Purple Panda with the little fuzzy cover on it, clipped to my chest, so further away from my mouth and nose. This will give us a better idea of how the quad sounds, because in the internal mic you really can't hear the quad. Remember that internal mic is actually embedded in the goggles. This is not audio from the quad itself.
All right, so this flight should last quite a bit longer. Reception seems to be very good. We're recording. We've got 3 and 4 bars, 4 and 5 bars. Pops around. Yeah, that's just fine. Battery still not showing full. I think my scale might be off a little bit or something.
So this is me editing back at the desk, speaking again, so we're not causing any sort of confusion. So the audio is much better as far as the speaking clarity. You can also hear this very quiet quad a little bit better, but it's not quite up to par as me using my prototypical setup, which is the cell phone sitting on the table, and then I blend in the 2 files into the edit process so that you can get a real idea of what the quad sounds like. I think this would work in most instances. I just think for myself and you're making YouTube videos that it's such an important feature of how our quad sounds, especially micro quads, that element I'm probably not going to be able to move away from it, but I just might every once in a while, depending upon the format. It's probably a little less necessary to have that really high quality, really sensitive audio when it comes to general flight videos. But it will come in very handy for me in making notes in the weather so that I don't have to miss any of my weather data, or if I'm actually lost a recording from the camera, because that has happened a few times. This will give me a secondary opportunity of recording my thoughts, because over the course of many flights I might have different thoughts, and I think it's important in review purposes that I hear those thoughts that I have at the beginning of the battery or at the end of the battery. Depends upon when my thoughts occur and when I decide to speak. I do think I fly better when I am not speaking. So that's probably something that I won't change in my format, is I won't speak while I fly. I'll do the narration after the fact still. I think that's gives us a better overall experience in your ability to discern what is what with the quad, and my ability to go back and recall these flights along with the notes that I would get from the microphone that I'm wearing connected to the HDZero goggles. Also, the ROSD has changed. Remember I talked about how those things are different? So that has a customization option that we have. Let's move into some analog flight with my prototypical flight recording so you can get an idea in the difference in the sound quality. So of course this is the same flight that you just saw, but I'm using the audio recording from my cell phone set up on a tripod on the table, so it's about 4 to 6 feet away from me, still giving you that pilot's perspective of what the quad sounds like.
Alright, so this flight should last quite a bit longer. Reception seems to be very good. We're recording. We've got 3 and 4 bars, 4 and 5 bars. Pops around. Yeah, that's just fine. Battery still not showing full. I think my scale might be off a little bit or something.
One of the features about HDZero is having that lowest latency glass to glass, and I don't necessarily have a way of measuring that other than to take video inside the lens and turn on the light. I'm not a fan of that. I don't get much from that as someone who would be watching that sort of thing. So being as I don't have another means of testing, I did find within my footage that I had an interesting happening, and I'm going to share that with you. As you can see there in the top center, this is the TKS 75 or TKS 78 actually. It's the 2S edition. It's a little bit bigger. Many people ask me about adding a second layer to this stack on this particular quad to do walk snail or HDZero. Unfortunately, it's just not compatible with adding a second layer without making all sorts of additional changes. Just the prop clearance isn't there. So what I suggest, if you're looking for something like the Rocket Race 2S that I featured on my channel about 2 years ago, look at the Star-Lord frame, build it out about the same. That's essentially what I did in the HDZero content that I showed you. So this is analog, so the picture quality is going to be different. This, of course, is way better in my experience in the goggles and in the DVR than what it was previously. So it makes analog even better if you enjoy analog. But I think it's time for me to be quiet and let that happening that speaks to the latency, at least my experience with the latency, speak for itself.
Whoa! Kicked something on the ground there. Actually, that was interesting. I saw it before I heard it. Oh, that's not possible. Oh, I'm in the pool stuff.
So that happened. That was my experience in the moment. I did not preconceive that in some way. That's just what happened early on, actually, when I started flying the HDZero goggles. So there have been firmware updates since. And I've showed you some of those visual elements that have been updated in the firmware, specifically the OSD elements. There's been some great work going on in the HDZero community to kind of sharpen those up, make them a little bit more visual appealing. And the nice thing is there's no stopping us from making our own changes to those OSD elements. So if you have different ideas, yeah, this is going to be great. So it comes down to the end of the video, and to kind of wrap it up or maybe even steal a line from Joshua Bardwell, is it worth it? If you fly analog and you're looking at this price point of goggle, yeah, it is worth it. Of course, you have to buy the module, so that's an additional expense. The module that you get, presumably, will have a separate power on and off switch. If you fly multiple systems that don't include the DJI, specifically the Vistas, or we used to call them air units or air unit lights, they're also under the name Link. Basically, we're using the goggles that make you look a little bit like a bug. If you don't fly that, I think this is the one to have. It's going to give you the best experience in analog. It's going to give you the best experience in HDZero. It's going to give you at least an equal, if not a greater experience with walk snail. And you have a whole lot more features and power for features to come. Remember when the Orca goggles launched and they were talking about future-proofing? These might not be future-proof because we never know what the future might bring, but it's hard to conceive this not being able to do something that we might, as a group, a large majority of the FPV community might want. And speaking of Orca, we haven't seen their HD system. It was touted at CES. Was that a year ago or so? If they come out with their own HD system and you want to give that one a try, or maybe even move to it, maybe there's some compelling feature for you, as long as their system has HDMI out in some way and it's not tied to their goggle, which it shouldn't be. It should be a module of some sort because they put that special port in their new FPV goggles. We should be able to do it on this as well. So yet another reason, I know I'm giving you kind of a hard sell here, it's just hard for me to come up with a reason not to get these goggles other than you're flying the DJI VTX transmission systems. Again, the Air Unit Lite, Air Unit, the O3, RunCam Link, all those things that are kind of associated with DJI. This will do all of those. Of course, it comes each step with a little bit more of expense, but you still have what I consider to be the best-in-class optics, lens, and optical experience as far as the human looking in, not looking at the hardware specs. This is really, really nice. And you have to kind of expect that because HDZero, specifically Carl Zhao, he went out to the FPV community to find out what everyone was looking for a goggle. And he kept taking that input and really in incredible time have made a really great product and a product that's only going to get better. It might be better by the time you're watching this video. So I'll put links down in the video description to the HDZero shop because they are only going to be sold by HDZero. I mentioned it earlier, but I want to affirm that again because I think this is a big point. Repair centers in Germany for all of us, or all of those friends that we might have in that area. We have a repair shop in China for anybody in that area, and we have a repair shop here in the US. So if you were to drop them and break them, or they were to have a fault of some sort in a year or two or something like that, presumably, they'll have at least those 3 service centers set up, and possibly more for, say, friends down in Australia or South America, those other areas that are a little bit further away. But you never know. That's to come. I'm only speculating or postulating on that bit. If you have any comments, questions, suggestions, or otherwise about these goggles, if there's something you'd like to see that I didn't show and I have the means to test it, I'll certainly give it a go. Please let me know in the comments section below. I appreciate your time. Thanks for watching.